What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. As always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Stephen Rambolo.
And you can subscribe to us over at Jersey First TV on YouTube. You can just hit that notification bell, get all of the latest content from Bridging the Gap, from the Nader narrative, from Real Talk with Fernando. You can check us out on jerseyfirst.org, where you could sign up for the pledge and you could sign up for our newsletter to keep up on all of your latest Jersey news. This summer, Jersey First is going to be doing a lot in the world of education and choice schools and whatnot. So stay tuned with all of that and all of the wonderful research that our interns are going to be doing over at Jersey First. But it's Memorial Day weekend, Steven. What's up? What's going on? What do you got looking forward to this weekend?
Work. as anybody who lives on the shore would tell you, work. It's that time of year, man. The unofficial kickoff of summer. And I'll tell you what, parking on the street is tight. All of the Benny neighbors, whom I love dearly, are down, getting ready to go out, hit the beach, hit the boardwalk, hit the bay, crab, fish, ride the rides, do all of the things that they've been cooped up in their homes all winter, just waiting to do. And, the wonderful residents of these beautiful shore towns are here to gladly assist, serve, man the stores, man the fishing boats, and keep it ready. So for me personally, I'm looking to enjoying my days. Going to spend some time with these people. Haven't seen them in a long time. Got a lot of catching up to do, and then at night I am doing one of the things I love the most. Dare I say, one of the things I am the best at, which is, leading a boardwalk business through the tumultuous Memorial Day weekend evenings, as a fearless leader at the helm, just carrying them through. I love it. I can't wait.
So two things. For those that are not shore people, or maybe not even New Jerseyans, what's a Benny? You threw out the term like everybody
I
would know
did.
it.
I did. So there's this. You could take it two ways, right? If you want to get in the weeds about it, there's people who assign it to an acronym, right? I think its origin is an acronym, which is like Bayonne, Elizabeth, Newark, and
Newark.
then New York.
Yeah.
So BENNY. To me, a Benny is anybody who, well, and I'll say those are those people who originate from those regions and then have second homes, shore homes, or they come down and they rent homes on the actual Jersey Shore, the barrier islands, and they spend their summers down here, spending their money, revitalizing our economy. And to put it in a nice way, I'll name all the good things about Benny's. If to somebody like me, who is a generational resident of a barrier island, a Benny is anybody who does not reside on the barrier island. That is a very firm line for me. Life is very different when you live here versus when you live over the bridge, for me, in Tom's River, or if you live in, Point Pleasant and you live over the bridge in Point Pleasant. Those are two different worlds. So to me, a Benny is anybody who does not reside on the barrier island, permanent, full time, for your life. If you are not born here, you have no local accreditation. You can build it up. It's like credit. You can kind of build it, but this is where my roots are. This is where they have been. Born and bred on the beach. This is my space. So if you ain't from here, you're a Benny. And if you're a Benny, we're going to have a hard time getting along, probably.
Well, I have to push back because I feel like you have a very strict definition of a Benny, saying if you're not from the border, from the barrier island, which I think is a bit unfair. I would say, I would say if you grow up in a shore town, which I would say I did, I wasn't born. I was born on a different, by a different shore, which was Long Island, but I was raised in a shore town in Island Heights. So I would say that I wouldn't be a Benny, so to speak. Now, that all being said, by your own definition, your mother's a Benny because she wasn't born on the Barrier Islands.
You're right. No, you're right.
And
You're
were
right.
raised, but she's lived there for like 40 years and raised two
I,
kids.
who am I to say? I would say, Mom, you should have been here sooner. I don't know what to tell you. That's not my decision to make.
Well, I think your definitions are a bit too strict. Now, that being said, the second point I wanted to make is you got like a whole crew of young kids. This is probably their first summer Memorial Day weekend, real weekend on the boardwalk. Are they
Oh
ready to
yeah.
rock and roll?
Oh yeah. Oh my god. Some of them, yes. Some of them, I'm a little bit afraid of. Not of. I'm afraid for them. I truthfully, I think in terms of a Memorial Day weekend, the weather's looking decent, and what it's looking like is boardwalk weather. It's not looking like beach weather. It's looking like boardwalk weather. Warm enough to get outside, warm enough to be by the ocean, but not warm enough to be able to, pop your shirt off and sit on the sand all day. You're gonna have to keep moving. You're gonna kind of have to peruse. It's a good night to go up and, throw a hoodie on, but the kids can ride the rides, or throw a hoodie on and, the kids can play the games. And so I think it's going to be good for us, boardwalk businesses. I don't think it's going to be a grand slam like we've seen, in years past. If it was, 80 degrees all day, then we're talking a completely different story. So the crew that I got, these kids are excited. We've been having a lot of fun getting up to this point, and I've been telling them, like, you guys are, having a tough go. Anybody that's worked a job on the boardwalk knows before Memorial Day, it's slow, and there are some days where you might not see a soul walk into your store for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it's boring and you don't want to be there. And I tell them, just wait. This is the threshold that we need to cross. And after this job is going to become fun. It's going to become exciting. You're going to be making money. You're going to be seeing people. There's going to be crazy things happening in Seaside Heights. Everybody knows crazy things go down in Seaside Heights. So this is the threshold. We're going to blow through it like a marathon. You don't just, get to the finish line. You got to run right through. And we're going to run right through and have an amazing summer. So with regard to that, couldn't be doing any better. I do have news in the way of something relevant to the show. However, I know we were going to potentially talk about books. And I was reading Meditations, and then I realized Meditations is like, it deserves a little more time than a month for me. Like, some of the stuff I really want to sit and ruminate on. So I switched up my book, and next week when we talk, I have begun already, kind of crushed about 3/4 of it, and will be finished with, I'm going to call it a supplementary book that I'm going to talk about next week. So stay tuned for that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Excited for that. And all good stuff. I think you're right. You just got to hit the ground running with Memorial Day weekend, and once you get through that, those kids you got working for you will be ready. They'll be ready for the grind. But let's get into some stories, Steve. What do you say?
We're just going to blow past you and how you've been.
I literally have done nothing all week. Like, I'm done with school. I haven't started work yet. I've been sitting at home, going on walks and reading. Like, that's what I've done all week. Really boring stuff.
Sounds pretty awesome. Sounds pretty awesome.
No, it sucked. It was good for like 2 days, and then I was like, "This is terrible. Get me to do something."
So AJ's never going to retire. Good to know.
You know what? I've been thinking about this. I think when it comes time for me to retire from my career, that's when I'll go back and maybe like I'll just substitute teach or something like that. Like be a badge checker on a beach somewhere or something. Like I can't just do nothing all day. It's awful. But
that is amazing.
Let's get some stories. All right. We are going to start with, I believe we decided to talk about colleges first, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
All right. So according to Forbes, there was this new report that was released talking about how college enrollment is down slightly in the spring of 2023, but community colleges have shown a small gain. Now, when you look deeper into the numbers, though, what you see is that these are down tremendously, these numbers, since pre-pandemic levels. So dating back to 2020, you've seen a sharp decline in all sectors of colleges, right? Whether it's public 2-year colleges, private 4-year colleges, public 4-year colleges, private nonprofit 4-year colleges, everything has seen a steady decline since the spring of 2020. Master's degrees and graduate schools have seen a sharp decline since 2020. And basically, across the board, we've been seeing these declines. So I guess the question then, Stephen, is why is this happening? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And quite frankly, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think kids are going out and they're saying, why do I have to go to college? Right? If I'm just going to put myself into tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt when I could get a job. I don't know what I want to do. I could get a job right now and I could be making money instead of going to college and putting myself in a terrible financial situation. And I think college is always going to be there. Like there's always going to be places to go and get a better education. And on top of all of that, since college has moved to sort of online, especially post pandemic, I think people are like, why even pay the money when I could get the same education on YouTube or a host of other, online type academies where you could get the same education. So, Steve, what do you think about this? I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
I am going to agree with you. So I was actually talking yesterday with a friend about this, and coincidentally, it ends up that this is what we're talking about this week. I think what impresses me the most, right, and this was a whole train of thought that we were having a very long-winded discussion, but it basically culminated in my opinion being shame on the system, as cliche as that sounds, for making kids believe at a very young age that college is the correct path. Like your prescribed path as a young adult in America is K to 12, and then I go to college. And I think that there are so many issues in K to 12 as it is that don't prepare students to understand the undertaking of college or the missed opportunities that come with college. Because as many doors as college opens, there are also some doors that shut. When one door opens, another one shuts, kind of thing. And I don't think that we do a really good job at explaining to kids, what higher education is for, who these degrees are good for, what they are good for, how to market them, how marketable some are, how unmarketable some are, and that a college degree isn't a golden ticket to a six-figure job. And so we talked about this, we read this, and to me, I see lower numbers and I see a great thing. I see kids coming to terms, understanding that there are other things that you can be that, aren't a college student. I don't want to incur $100,000 of debt and be, financially with my back pinned against the wall for the majority of my adult life, let alone getting things like a car, a house, having a child. There's a lot of really good reasons to not go to college. That being said, another great thing, in my opinion, about this that I saw is maybe if these rates continue to decline, colleges will take a look and say, why are students not coming here? Why do students not want these degrees? And then when they find out that it's because kids don't want to live in debt until they're 55, maybe we can start beginning to have a conversation about college tuition, how it's been blown out of proportion, the role that the government played in that, and guaranteeing these loans to people with no functional credit life or score that have a really hard time paying these things back. And then we can have a discussion as colleges start to lose students about maybe lowering the price of college to make it a little bit more affordable for the people who do need this degree to go and, acquire the career that they want to get. You and I are sitting here trying to be lawyers, so college wasn't really a choice. It was the next step. Law school isn't really a choice if you want to be a lawyer. It is the next step. So making it affordable for the people who have the desire, have done the work to go and do it, and not be pinned against the wall for 55 years with $200,000 of debt.
Yeah, I absolutely. First of all, it's the only debt that you can't declare bankruptcy on, right? If you die at a young age, your parents or your heirs are saddled with this same debt that you had, right? You can't just get rid of it. And I think on top of all of that, it's like, what are you going to college to learn? Because quite frankly, I don't know about you, Stephen. We had some great professors, and I learned a great deal. But the classes that I learned a great deal in were things not necessarily directly classroom related learning. if that
Yeah.
makes any sense. I learned a lot in my philosophy classes and my ethics classes and my and classes that we discussed bigger, more philosophical concepts of functioning in society. It's like I think that's what college was supposed to be about. You're talking about a liberal arts education. You're talking about how to like be a good citizen. You're talking about how to be a well-rounded person. And I don't think college is teaching that on a grand scale anymore. And I think that's why people are disenchanted. Like I don't, quite frankly, and this is just, coming from somebody in my position. It's like, why does the young white guy in America want to go to college just to be told that he's racist and not worth anything? It's like that's what college is becoming. It's like you're surrounding yourself, and if you're a man, you're surrounding yourself in a culture that says like toxic masculinity is this awful thing. If you're a white person, you're surrounding yourself in a culture that's telling you you're racist because you happen to be born white. And it's like maybe that's why people aren't going to college. It's like, why would I go to college when, first of all, I'm going to be saddled in debt. Second of all, I'm going to be told that I'm good for nothing. Me by the dent of my skin and the gender that I was born into, are this, or the sex I was born into is this terrible person. And meanwhile, I could, be a plumber and make six figures right out of, after a couple of years out of high school. And everybody's going to need a plumber, like whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, why do it? So maybe wake up a little bit. Like you're disenfranchising yourself. You're disillusioning young people from getting a good education. Like I think education is important, and I think learning is something that human beings need to do to be functioning members of society. And I just think that right now, college in the United States is not where you're going to get your best education. And I've been there. I've been in college for the last, 6 years at this point. I have a 4-year degree. I have a master's degree. I just finished my first year of law school. Some of the best education I got was off of things like YouTube and just reading old books.
I agree with you entirely. I think what's interesting about that point is that there is, whether or not we want to admit it and have the discussion about it, right, is a different story. But the cultures surrounding education and the ideals that education promotes implicitly, even in their operation and their function and how admissions work and how, certain scholarships are awarded, like all of these things, everything that a college does is a signal to the morals and values that they are trying to impart unto their students. And the minute that those become unsavory to a large part of the population, you then have a problem, and you as an institution need to ask yourself, what is wrong with what we are doing? What is right with what we are doing? Is this something that a college should have an opinion on? Is it something that a higher education institution should be promoting or, telling people is bad? Because I do think that a lot of important, and I want to say this so clearly, like empirically objective factual information, knowledge, facts get watered down when people impose the promotion of a certain kind of culture or initiative or opinion behind it, and you cloud facts with some sort of bias to promote an agenda, whatever agenda that may be. I think that education should be for the purpose of educating, not for the purpose of educating with the intent to make somebody believe X or the intent to make somebody believe Y. It should be, I agree with you, a discussion, a conversation, this sort of Socratic method of here's, this topic and we're going to talk about it. And I want to know what you think and why you think this. And do you agree? Do you disagree? And education is understanding. And understanding is what opens the door to have good discussions, to allow yourself to learn, to allow your thoughts to be challenged. But it doesn't begin without understanding. And I think the qualifier I want to put on that is understanding reasonably. I think if somebody has unreasonable opinions and perspectives, we can tell them you have unreasonable opinions and perspectives. And what you're saying, if it's based on those unreasonable things, is not for me. I'm not going to participate in that. I don't want to be a part of that because your foundation for what you were saying is unreasonable. I think that's fair. And the colleges clearly haven't done a good job at deciding, what are things that reasonable people want to hear, want to learn, want to understand, and want to participate in. So colleges need to do out some soul searching, is what it is. And they really need to kind of have their heartbeat on, or their finger on the heartbeat of this culture that's coming up and the reactions to these things.
Yeah, Steve. I think what you said is absolutely right, and I just want to be crystal clear. Like I want people who are in minority classes like to feel like also comfortable in a college setting, and they should, and they have every right to go there and feel comfortable. But the discussions need to be had in a productive and reasonable manner, like you're saying. Like when you turn on the news or you turn on a YouTube clip and you see at institutions that are known as like these high watermarks in our society for free speech and expression and discussion, like places like UC Berkeley and these places where free speech in the 60s really like became something and meant something, are now shutting down speakers because they might disagree on something with some sect of the community. It's like, why would anybody want to go there? What are you going to do if there's no challenge? If there's no challenge to your preconceived notions and your beliefs, why are you even going? You want to challenge people's ideas. You want to challenge people's preconceived notions. I remember, I'll make this really quick because we do have some other stories we want to cover. My second semester freshman year, I had a professor and he taught history of television and radio, right? It was a great class. He was a great professor. And one of my favorite things he would do is he would walk into class, and he did this a couple of times. He walked into class and he would just say something that he knew would get a rise out of people. One day he walked in and he was like, Leonardo DiCaprio is a bad actor. And people were like, what are you talking about? He was like, no, he's a bad actor. Every time Leonardo DiCaprio comes on the screen, I'm not like, oh, look at this character. I'm like, oh, it's Leonardo DiCaprio playing blah, blah, blah. And he just like, he's a bad actor. No, of course, Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor. Like, we all know that. He knows that. But he's just trying to get a rise out of you. He's trying to make you illustrate and argue that point and why you know that's true, right? He one day walked in and he was like, climate change is fake. Climate change is fake. And and then he like just started speaking about how he thought climate change was fake. I don't think he actually thought climate change was fake, but he made you back up your point, and he made you argue why climate change was happening. Right? Like, this is what college is for. And when you take that away and you make college a safe space where you're not going to be challenged and not given new ideas, then it's useless. Why am I putting myself in $120,000 of debt to not even get that baseline of an education? That I have to be able to back up my points if I'm going to make an argument. I think it's ridiculous. And I'm lucky, and I know, Stephen, you're lucky because we had very similar education, that Montclair State did a great job at facilitating that environment, surprisingly enough to some. Because I say it all the time. I think I got a great education at Montclair State University. But other colleges just aren't doing that. And it's like, why am I going to put myself in tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to not even get that baseline of an education?
Yeah, I think also just worth noting on this is this doesn't just function in the humanities, right? Like, it's easy for me and you to sit here and, with two social science degrees where, we're like the word people, where it's like, oh, you guys talk about words and ideas and blah, 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 blah. But this functions in STEM similarly. Like, that's why it exists to have peer-reviewed papers, right? When you publish a study, you have to get up and you have to defend your thesis, right? So you have to have your work, your ideas, your thoughts, your procedures, everything about your academic conclusions, whether it be an opinion on philosophy or your data that suggests, X, Y, and Z. It has to be defensible, and you have to be in an environment where it gets attacked, whether it's that's a brutal term or not. You have to stand up and defend your ideas, defend what you've worked for, and receive pushback and understand why somebody might disagree or why this is a valid question, that, could be a mark against your procedures. And education is learning how to do those things, how to field ideas, how to be understanding, how to have conversation. And I would double down and agree with you. Montclair State University gave me a tremendous opportunity to do that every step of the way. And I feel very fulfilled with the education that I have there. And I'm very grateful to that institution for giving it to me. It is a sleeper of a school in New Jersey where we have some other big name institutions. If I could do it all over again, I would absolutely do it the exact same way.
Yeah, step aside Princeton and Rutgers.
Get
Get
out
off your high horse. Get off your high horse.
Except Rutgers Law. Talk to me.
Yeah, you could talk to him. That's just because Montclair doesn't have a law school yet.
You're right.
So let's move on to our next story, Steve. What do you say?
Yeah.
I think this is a fun story.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, a few years back when Trump was in the White House, he signed this executive order that was basically like making buildings beautiful again act. And the idea was to sort of switch back towards all federal buildings should be of beautified, should be of a certain architectural style, right? And so a GOP representative from Indiana, Jim Banks, introduced legislation on Wednesday to codify that executive order to make the classical architecture the model for new government buildings. But the executive order was axed by President Biden. So he called it the Beautifying Federal Civic Architecture Act and declared traditional and classical architectural styles to be preferred for new federal government buildings. What I think is even more interesting is how it went into a little bit more detail than even the Trump executive order, saying that the traditional architecture includes classical architecture and the historic humanistic architecture, including Gothic, Romanesque, Pueblo Revival, Spanish colonial, and other Mediterranean styles of architecture historically rooted in various regions of America. The bill denounces modern brutalist styles of buildings made popular in the 20th century, defined as a, quote, massive and block-like appearance with rigid geometric style and large-scale use of exposed poured concrete. Buildings should instead be modeled after the Greek and Roman antiquity, such as the U.S. Capitol and the Supreme Court. So I think this is a really interesting bill, and a bill that, quite frankly, I really enjoy. And I think will be a good thing for society, right? And what I really like about the bill is that you'll see the different architecture in different areas. So, take Florida, for example, where there's a lot more of that Spanish and South American influence on architecture. So the federal buildings will be of that Pueblo, or not, I guess, Spanish colonial architecture. In the Southwest, it will be of that Pueblo architecture. In the Massachusetts, it might be more of the Gothic architecture that you'll see in these federal buildings. And I think that that's a good thing. And I think that that's an effective thing. And I think that too often we sort of, we don't realize how important it is to be around beautiful things and be around beautiful buildings and to beautify parts of your life. Because genuinely, when you're around beautiful things, life becomes more beautiful. And I think one of the purposes of buildings, especially government buildings, like something that we kind of lost, but something that's important. And you go down to Washington, D.C. and look at the Supreme Court building, look at the Capitol building, look at the White House, look at the New York Public Library, right? Go to these places and look at these beautiful buildings. And it's like, why? Why are there angels in the architecture up on the top? It's to make you look up and realize that you're part of something bigger. You're part of something more. And to be inspired to attain something. It's like, why do people pilgrim to Rome, have these pilgrimages to Rome and Greece and England and Europe and even in Asian countries and Eastern countries Eastern European countries Ukraine's and Russia's, and because of these old beautiful buildings that you can see the history in, right? And in Latin America, you have these even the beautiful buildings that, the Native American indigenous cultures built, these beautiful things like Chichen Itza. In Africa, you have these beautiful buildings in the pyramids of Giza, and so on and so forth. And it's like every single culture has these, and these identifiable architecture that goes with them. And we, in the 20th century, I think, mostly with the rise of communism and socialism, you've seen like a destruction of these beautiful buildings, especially in like Eastern Europe, where if you look at like old Russian architecture, it's like these gorgeous churches and buildings, and then this like gross concrete slabs of Soviet architecture, which I know, Stephen, you might disagree with. I just think it's so ugly looking. It's so like not. There's nothing that brings anything out of you. You just look at them and you're like, yeah, okay, it's 4 walls of concrete. How great! Like, I think this is a really good thing and a really overlooked thing that we forget about.
So I sit in a weird spot here because I agree with everything that you've said. Everything that you've said is 100% accurate. And I'll add that every Friday at about 10 in the morning, I too am reminded of the fact that when you see beautiful things, you remember that everything else is beautiful. We
record this show at 10 o'clock on Fridays. He's talking about me.
I am talking about you. Look at you with that nice white suit, like marble. You're embodying it. I don't know what to tell you. No, so I agree with you. There is a certain aura about buildings like this, right? I've done a bit of traveling in Europe, and I've seen places like Notre Dame. I've seen the Duomo in Florence, right? I've been to Rome, and it is very grandiose, and it feels imposing of beauty and imposing of time, right? These things don't just get put up. These things have to be made. They have to be crafted. They are functional art in a way. You walk down the street and you're looking at these creative masterpieces. There's some churches that, took 200 years to build because they're testaments to whatever the culture at the time was and how it's reflected. And that's why we have things like Gothic style and, these new like Greco-Roman things. And I appreciate and I understand all of that. I think that the complete denunciation of brutalism is where I disagree on this. I think that there is functionality to brutalist architecture. And you mentioned the Soviet Union, and I was going to bring this up. So a lot of the Soviet government structures were built in brutalist style. And the most famous brutalist building, at least for the U.S. federal government, is the J. Edgar Hoover building, which, if you've ever seen it in like Washington, D.C., sticks out like a sore thumb because it is brutalist. And the theory behind brutalism, at least for the communists in, the Soviet Union, and I would say a lot of people would agree with the FBI at the time this building was being built, is that these structures are made to feel imposing of the strong hand of the government. You should, put yourself in a communist state. Yes, there you go. So that is by far and away the most brutalist building in the federal government complex of DC. And if you look at it, it's just walls and windows, and that's it. There's nothing beautiful. There's nothing crafty. And it's the FBI. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It is an intimidating agency. It is we don't really know what goes on in these walls agency. And I think the building does a really good job at reflecting that. And for its purpose, it does well. So brutalist architecture is meant to be imposing. It's meant to be intimidating. It's meant to be bare bones. We are here for one thing and one thing only.
Isn't that exactly the problem, though, right? Like, this is the government. We live in a democracy. Like, this shouldn't be imposing. This shouldn't be what's going on behind those 4 walls. This shouldn't be imposing you're scared of your government. No, you are your government. Your government works for you.
So yes, I agree with you. I cannot help but understand why, like I said, in the Soviet Union, it made sense for them to build buildings.
Yeah, this awful authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship that literally put tens of thousands, millions of people to death in gulags. Yeah, it makes sense. And that's exactly why it should not be. You're right. You're right. It makes sense for the place that slaughtered tens of millions of people.
Yes, yes. I want to double back on this, and I want to say, with regard to this bill, I'm all in. I think the United States, we should have, these buildings, and you see it like even in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is Philadelphia is like a really, right now, not a place I want to be, but the architecture there is beautiful, and it is historical, and it does sort of transport you. It makes you feel like, wow, this is, when my country was started, this is what these buildings looked like, what, values were important to them that they enshrined in structure, because a lot of these structures, you know, all the carvings and stuff tell a story, and it's interesting, it's fun, and I agree with you. 100% federal buildings, let's do it. Make them beautiful, make them fun. But listen, man, at the end of the day, the house that I want to live in, I would love to live in a home with exposed concrete on the exterior that is this just slab of nothing except it occupies space, it looks beautiful, and you drive by and you're like, who lives in that house?
I mean,
What are
sure,
they
like
up to?
your own home, do whatever you want with it. But I think that as a society, right, we should be trying to make people look to something bigger and not an imposing way, like a real deep way, right? There, the Paul Simon song is just in my head, right? It's like seeing the angels in the architecture. It that that means something. Like I that's in my brain. It's like why would they take this time to literally sculpt beautiful scenes into these pieces of these buildings? It's like because you're looking up to something. Because it should inspire you to be more. We're running out of time, Steve.
It's poetic. It's poetic. Hopefully it passes.
We'll see. We'll see. Apparently, the Biden administration didn't like the executive order, but hopefully, a GOP-led House can get something done. They can't even get a budget passed, so there's really
Yeah,
no
well,
hope. But
mhm,
that's another story for another day.
yeah,
But let's wrap up talking a little bit about Jersey beaches. A
yeah,
little quick 5-minute segment, Steve.
yeah. So we got two quick little stories here that I think are worth talking about since it is Memorial Day weekend, Jersey Shore. This is like we kicked off the episode, big prime time, start of the summer, and this actually just broke an hour ago. We're getting this off Fox News. A New Jersey beach city banned, and this is the quotation that they use, the mere existence of any kind of alcohol on the beach or the boardwalk. So we're talking about, a lot of people when they hear this might think
Ocean City.
Ocean City, right? That is not the case. We're talking about Wildwood. And if you know anything about Wildwood,
That's a
especially
party
if you're from
beach.
here, that's exactly what it is. Big time party beach. So what happened was, and this is the new ordinance that got passed last night on Thursday. It says, quote, alcohol of any kind. Hold on. I was reading the wrong thing there. Um, that was a statement from the mayor. Unimportant. Point is, violators could face fines. You ready for this one? Up to $2,000 in a fine or 90 days in jail if you are
Wow.
caught with the existence of alcohol or any other banned or illicit substances. They talk about marijuana, smoking marijuana on the beach and the boardwalk as being a problem and included in this prohibition. They did say, however, first time offenders are likely just going to be told to, either dump it out, throw it out, or head back home to wherever you're staying for the day, and is what it is. Um, People are, already taking issue with this, obviously, because, like you said, Wildwood is a bit of a party beach. People like to go down to Wildwood for, at least regionally for us, that's where the kids go for prom, where they, you know, get all liquored
Where they
up and
do
roam the
things that
streets.
prom kids do. We've all been there.
Yes, yes, exactly. And the mayor and council have said that this is a public safety concern, it's a public health concern, and it's just a cleaning up the town and making families want to come here concern. So we'll see how this goes. This is going to be the first summer of a dry Wildwood, it assumes, and I think it's quite appropriate that they snuck it in quite literally the day before Memorial Day weekend. They've been fighting with this. Apparently, it hit the legislature May 10th, so it took them a little bit to get it through. But it is through, done, codified, and moving forward. Wildwood, the second dry beach town in New Jersey, to my knowledge.
Well, I mean, there'll still be liquor stores and bars on the island. You just can't drink outside of like in public, right? Is that basically the ordinance? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like, especially if you want families, if you want to build up a more welcoming thing for young families to come to your beach town, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think Seaside Heights has been trying to get more of that family vibe back after the Jersey Shore came and sort of got rid of that young family energy in the town. And I don't see anything wrong. That's who's spending the money, right? It's the young families. Yep. It's not really the 21 to 28-year-olds that are getting drunk on the beach. They're not spending the money that the people with kids are spending. So I can see it being upsetting for people that go to Wildwood and frequent it and treat it as a party beach. But if I'm the legislature of Wildwood, kind of going back to what we were saying before, like, I want to make this a more beautiful place. I want to make this a more welcoming place for people to come and come to our beach. And I don't see anything too wrong with that, but we'll see how it's going to be tough to implement. So we'll see.
Yeah. Implementation with something like that is always going to be the task. It's going to require the police to be a little more vigilant. And, I think you're going to have a lot of disgruntled teenagers, young people, but it is what it is. So I would double down also on that, bless you. And I would say that a town like Seaside should maybe take their cues here because, unfortunately what's going to happen is all the people that would be going to Wildwood to do this are going to say, oh, we can't do it in Wildwood. Where's the next party beach? Seaside Heights, and then we get the sort of double time from the people that were already going to come here and the people that wanted to do that in Wildwood and can't. So we're the second best option. So I think maybe there's going to be a requirement to follow suit here to maybe prevent that from happening and in a tactile way, like you said, work on something that this town's working on for a very long time, which is promoting, bless you, a family-friendly space where you're not going to come across, like you said, liquored up teens and young people who are out just causing mayhem on the Jersey Shore. So we'll see.
For sure.
We'll see.
And what's our last story there, Steve?
Last story, this is a super quick one. I just thought it would be fun to talk about. There's an article that came out today on NJ.com that talks about the prices for beach badges across all the beaches in the state. And they have them ranked for the highest to lowest on the daily badge price. So if you take a drive down to, whatever beach and you want to get on for the day, you got to buy a badge. They ranked it highest to lowest. So I want to know your best guess at what you think the highest and what you think the lowest.
Well, there's free beaches, right? So I don't know. There's a couple of free beaches. Those are going to be the lowest. Yep. I don't know any off the top of my head that's a free beach. Sandy Hook or free beach?
Sandy Hook's a free beach. Wildwood, Strathmere, North Wildwood, Atlantic City, all free beaches.
Okay. The most expensive beach for a day pass?
Yep.
I'm going to go with like a more north beach, like a Asbury Park maybe?
No. So there are 1, 2, 3, there are 4 that are tied for the most expensive at $13 a day.
Okay.
And those 4 are Jenkinson's, Lavalette,
Point Pleasant, Lavalette,
Maniloking, and Seaside Park.
Okay, so not really too north of beaches.
No, but quite literally sandwiched between Ortley Beach and Seaside. are the four most expensive daily
So
beaches in the
Seaside
state.
Heights and Ortley Beach, you're probably going to have a lot of day trippers.
Yes.
Because
So
what's their price?
Ortley Beach is 11, and Seaside Heights I think is 10 maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you're
am
saving.
yeah,
You got a family of 5. You're saving $15 to go to Seaside Heights instead of Seaside Park, and you
yeah.
got the boardwalk right there.
Yep. So very nice. And then the lowest price that isn't free, I thought this was interesting, is Sea Isle City. Sea Isle City, Barnegat Light are tied at $5 daily. And then just above them was your guess, Asbury Park at $6 for a daily
Yeah,
badge.
see, like that's pretty good. Like $5-6 for the daily beach badge, I would say is reasonable. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're talking $13. Like, look, Lavalette, Jenks, Seaside Park, they're all nice beaches. Don't get me wrong, Manalocan, but that's steep. I don't
It is
know.
steep. It is steep. And I want to double down on this one, and I want to just talk about real quick the seasonal badges. So like if you buy it and you can go as many times as you want through the whole season. Sea Isle City, their seasonal pass is $25 or $20 if you buy it before May 15th. So you missed that. So it's $25.
So if you go 5 times, it's worth it.
Yeah. Compare that to a town like Jenkinson's, right, which was the most expensive. Their badge, seasonal badge, is $130.
Well, yeah, you got to go 10 times to make that worth it.
Yeah. So I just think it's interesting the disparity between prices, like you said. Jersey's full of great beaches. I have never come across a beach in New Jersey that I've hated, and this is a can of worms that we could open up on another, day. But I don't see why all these beaches can't be free. But
I mean, the town gets a lot of money, right? The town gets a lot of money.
town gets a lot of money, but they don't do nothing to protect them. So.
I mean, then you look at an Island Beach State Park, which I mean has always been like $5 to get on. I don't know if that's still the price.
Yeah, so they have that on here as well. Let me pull that up real quick.
Like
Island
$5
Beach
per
State
car.
Park. Yeah, Island Beach State Park is $10 per weekend. So $10 per car on the weekend, $6 on the
On a
weekday
weekday.
for
Yeah, so like, and that's a really good beach too. And if you have a car that could go on the beach, that's like one of the few beaches you could drive on and fish
Yep.
out of. Do the bonfires on the beach. I love Island Beach State Park. I think it's
Island
great.
Beach State Park's
Great
great, and you
beach.
go all the way to the end, and you get a view of Old Barney right on the inlet
That's
there.
right.
So we'll
That's
see.
right.
A lot of beautiful beaches.
For sure. Well, we'll keep the beach talk as the summer goes, but I think with that, Steve, that'll wrap us up here on another episode of Bridging the Gap on the Jersey First TV network. Subscribe to Jersey First TV, hit the notification bell, check us out on jerseyfirst.org. I'm Adrian Malillo,
I'm Stephen Rombolo.
and I hope you guys have a wonderful week and a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Talk to you next week.